from U.S. and Israeli allies to get something to change, because there isn't any viable peace process going on at all. So what are the alternatives as somebody who still believes in a solution that a lot of other people just feel has failed and allowed for a status quo to continue?
Yeah, it's a critically important question, I think. Look, the interesting thing is today, President Trump will be meeting with Arab leaders from Turkey, not an Arab country, but Islamic country, Egypt, Jordan, the Emiratis, the Saudis, about an end to the war and what his ideas are for ending it. It seems to me that if Europeans, Arab states, and the U.S. wanted to invest in something, it wouldn't be in trying to force a negotiation or even recognize a Palestinian state to be tucked away and for a rainy day. It would be finding a pathway to end the war, relieve the misery of the hostages and their families and the 2 million Palestinians who are suffering in Gaza today, figure out an alternative to Hamas, and create a pathway that might over time actually, with new leaders in Israel and among Palestinians, maybe offer some hope that a solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict will be possible. You can't get beyond October 7. It's got to be dealt with, and that means ending the war.
But what possibility is there? I mean, the ceasefire talks have completely broken down. In fact, Israel bombed Qatar to strike Hamas negotiators that were reviewing a U.S. proposal. The hostages are still being held in Gaza by Hamas in terrible conditions. There are daily Israeli attacks that continue not just in Gaza, but in other places like Lebanon. There's an increase in settler violence in the West Bank, where Israel has continued to annex land which is deemed illegal under international law and is detrimental to a future Palestinian state. So what pathway is there when everything this administration and the previous administration has done has so far failed?
You know, it's a fantastic question, and I'd add three more. Who or what is going to govern Gaza? Who or what is going to guarantee security, preempt further conflict between Israel and Hamas or any Palestinian derivative? And who or what is going to deliver humanitarian assistance on a predictable and regular basis? And then who or what is going to supply the dollars required, the billions required for reconstruction of Gaza? I mean, I wish I had answers to these questions. Really, I don't. What you need is what's been missing. And frankly, right now, we don't have it. You need leadership in Israel.
Right.
You need leadership in Washington. And you need some semblance of a Palestinian national movement that is effective and can control and create a monopoly of violence on the forces within Palestinian society. You don't have any of those things.
Yeah. So in this moment, if it's not recognizing the Palestinian state, as we've seen many countries do, what leverage, what pressure needs to come to bear here in the few seconds we have left?
Look, I'll speak as an American. Governing is about choosing. It's about making an issue a priority. And the reality is we've allowed our special relationship with Israel that could be used very effectively and has been used effectively. Kissinger, Carter, and Baker, the three Americans who actually produced something. The relationship was special, but it was not exclusive, which meant that the United States could demonstrate its own independence at the negotiating table.
Aaron David Miller is a former State Department Middle East negotiator and a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for Peace. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is NPR News.
And this is WNYC. Later on Morning Edition, 6 weeks from now, New York City residents will cast their vote for the person they want to be their next mayor for 4 years. Morning Edition's Campaign Catch-Up is a quick weekly look at the latest on the race. Coming up, we'll talk through the recent twists and turns with Errol Lewis, host of Inside City Hall on New York One. That's later this hour. And then stay tuned for the BBC News Hour. That's coming up at 9 right here on WNYC.
WNYC supporters include New York Presbyterian, reminding listeners that regular cancer screenings could save lives. New York Presbyterian offers a full range of cancer screenings, including lung, breast, prostate, and more. Learn more at nyp.org/cancer screening.
Leadership support for WNYC's local and digital news initiatives is provided by the Jerome L. Green Foundation, a proud supporter of New York City's major cultural institutions.
At WNYC, Many of our listeners are also our contributors. But that's not just during our pledge drives. If you have an important news tip or confidential information in the public interest, our newsroom wants to hear from you. We even have our own encrypted messaging service to help you protect your identity. Visit our newsroom submission page at gothamist.com/tips. We hope to hear from you.
We have some C train skipping stops in Manhattan. We have delays on downtown A and E trains as well right now. And then here's our forecast. 69 and partly sunny. A slight chance of afternoon showers, maybe some thunderstorms in the late afternoon. It will become sunny and warm, a high of 81. Chances of showers and thunderstorms tonight and a low of 67. It is 8:22. Thanks for tuning in this morning.
Support for NPR comes from member stations and from Cigna Healthcare, a health benefits provider that advocates for better health through every stage of life. Learn more at Cigna.com. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. RWJF is a national philanthropy working toward a future where health is no longer a privilege, but a right. Learn more at rwjf.org. And Ooma, a cloud-based phone service for any size business, with an automated virtual receptionist, video meetings, and other features to connect to customers and coworkers anywhere. At ooma.com/NPR.
This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin.
I'm Layla Falded.
And I'm Steve Inskeep. Peter Navarro is a longtime advisor to President Trump. He is an architect of Trump's approach to trade and also a former prison inmate. He spent 4 months in jail last year for refusing to testify before a House investigation of the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Navarro has written a book about his experience called I Went to Prison So You Won't Have to. Welcome to NPR, Mr. Navarro. It's good to talk with you again.
You can call me Peter. I know you, Steve. We go back a long ways, brother.
Navarro was in our studios Monday morning, just hours after he had returned on a late-night flight from a memorial service for the murdered activist Charlie Kirk.
I just miss the guy dearly. He was very important to me. And he's just so human.
Navarro was still wearing his black suit, and he reflected on Kirk's political importance.
The comparison I give is Ralph Reed and Dave Axelrod are the two kind of gold standard political organizers.
Interesting. Republican organizer of the 90s and political strategist for President Obama.
Exactly. And what Reed did was take the Christians in the churches and get them to the ballot box. What Axelrod did in a similar way, using these micro-targeting and very sophisticated messaging, he got blacks, Hispanics, and the youth to come in the 2008 and elect the first African-American president. It's an astonishing achievement. But what Charlie did was actually a significantly higher degree of difficulty, because not only did he have to mobilize the youth to vote for Trump, before he could do that, he had to persuade them. And that was a heavy lift.
Navarro had come by for a previously scheduled interview on his book, which offers a day-by-day account of his 4 months in a minimum security prison in Miami last year. In our talk, he described meeting other inmates.
And one of the guys says, we like you. And I go, why do you like me? And they go, well, you're not a snitch.
Navarro contends his case is not about snitching, but the Constitution. When subpoenaed by Congress over the January 6th attack, he said he was forbidden because of President Trump's executive privilege, an argument the court rejected.
And I proceeded to spend an hour explaining how on 5 different occasions I had had communications directly with President Trump indicating that he had invoked executive privilege, and I was supposed to not speak and honor that subpoena. It was clear.
What the judge said, and there was a question about whether Trump even could invoke executive privilege because he wasn't president anymore, but let's set that aside. The judge said there were a couple of other officials, Mark Meadows and Dan Scavino, who presented letters from President Trump in which President Trump claimed executive privilege so that it could be argued about. He said you did not present such a letter. Why didn't Trump give you one?
That's true, but...
Why didn't Trump give you one?
Well, here's the point. That's not the point. The point is that First of all, the privilege is presumptive. It was presumed.
Though Navarro has finished his prison term, he has continued an appeal. After Trump won the 2024 election, the Justice Department withdrew its support of the case against him, and that is one of many course changes at the Justice Department this year. Let me ask about another aspect of this that you feel strongly about, I know. You feel that political prosecutions are wrong. You feel that you were the subject of a political prosecution.
I think we would both agree that political prosecutions are wrong.
What have you thought about?
The question is whether you believe mine was.
What have you thought about in recent days as the president has ever more publicly pushed the Justice Department to prosecute people that he feels targeted him, even going to the extent of replacing a U.S. attorney who found no evidence against Letitia James of New York?
This is a wake-up call that the justice system is being weaponized against people. And this is your punchline here. If you don't hold the people accountable who weaponize that Justice Department, they'll do it again. And again and again.
But my question is about what's happening now. This is a very interesting case. Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, prosecuted Trump. Trump now wants her investigated not for that prosecution, but for something to do with real estate ownership. And his own appointed U.S. attorney seems to have looked into that, found no evidence sufficient to prosecute. And therefore, the president has replaced the U.S. attorney and wants to send in someone else who will prosecute. Doesn't that sound political to you?
Let me answer you this way, okay? Because Letitia James is a sideshow. She's a footnote to all of the other things that were done to stop Trump from getting elected or to get him out of office. And I don't know about Letitia James, but I do know, and I've said publicly, that I think James Comey, FBI director, Clapper and Brennan, Page, Strzok, all these FBI people. I think Schiff lied to Congress, and he needs to be investigated. And there's a whole list of people.
This is my question, if I can. This is my question. Okay. Should the government try to find anything they possibly can against these people? See if there's a real estate document. That's what they're literally doing.
Well, that's what you say that they're doing.
No, it's what they've openly done.
What did they do to Trump? You want to know what our mindset is. That's what you want to know.
Sure.
So let me tell folks in NPR just a simple Newtonian principle. That's why I'm here. I went to prison so you won't have to. It's a tale about accountability.
But I think your point is something must be done however it must be done. That's what you feel?
No, not however it must be done. Do it between the lines. But for example, like Lisa Cook at the Fed, it's like obviously Donald Trump doesn't want her in there because he views her policies are incompetent. But two things can be true. It's also true that it appears now on 3 different occasions she filled out fraudulent paperwork.
The administration accused the Federal Reserve governor of claiming multiple primary residences. Lisa Cook denies wrongdoing. Some records say she described one as a vacation home, and courts have so far blocked Trump's bid to fire her as he seeks control of the Fed. Peter Navarro warns the administration is short of time.
And that's the problem here, because if the Democrats regain the House in 2026, can you guarantee me right now that they won't subpoena me and everybody else in the White House and do the same crap again? I'll make the prediction. Of course they will, because they think they can do whatever they want until they're held accountable.
Peter Navarro, it's a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much.
Steve. Good to see you.
His book is called I Went to Prison So You Won't Have to. This is NPR News.
It's 8:30, or it's coming up on 8:30 News Headlines. Remember, every Saturday, WNYC's reporters and show producers collect the best of the week's stories for our email newsletter. Catch up with what you might have missed. Sign up for the WNYC Weekly Brief at wnyc.org/newsletters.
WNYC receives support from FX, presenting The Lowdown, starring Ethan Hawke. This new drama follows quirky journalist Lee Raybon, whose obsession with the truth always gets him into trouble. FX's The Lowdown premieres tonight at 9 on FX. Stream on Hulu.
Moderna. Moderna's mNEXSpike COVID-19 vaccine, mRNA, is now available. More information about mNEXSpike is available from local pharmacists and medical providers.
If you believe democracy requires a free press, your station is WNYC, 93.9 FM and AM 820. NPR News and the New York Conversation.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Dave Mattingly. The Trump administration is blaming the active ingredient in Tylenol, acetaminophen, for a rise in autism despite inconclusive science. The president is urging pregnant women to avoid using the common painkiller. Many physicians groups and autism advocates are calling Trump's assertions potentially dangerous, citing the health risks of a fever during pregnancy. President Trump addresses the UN General Assembly today, a day after France joined several other countries in recognizing Palestinian statehood amid the war between Israel and Hamas. Here's NPR's Franco Ordonez.
Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says President Trump will deliver a speech touting the administration's accomplishments while criticizing the work of international organizations like the United Nations.
The president will also touch upon how globalist institutions have significantly decayed the world order, and he will articulate his straightforward and constructive vision for the world.
She says the president will also be meeting together with the leaders of Qatar and Saudi Arabia, as well as have one-on-one meetings with the leaders of Ukraine and the European Union. The visit comes as the president has become more isolated in the UN, where there is a growing push to recognize a Palestinian state.
This is NPR News from Washington.
On WNYC in New York, 68 and partly sunny at 8:32. Good morning, I'm Michael Hill. New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani says he will reschedule a televised town hall hosted by WABC Channel 7 now that his parent company is returning talk show host Jimmy Kimmel to the airwaves. Kimmel was suspended last week after Trump administration officials criticized remarks he made about conservative activist Charlie Kirk's accused killer. Mamdani said he withdrew from the town hall because the move had a chilling effect on free speech.
And we cannot normalize these kinds of acts nor offenses. These must be the basis upon which we act to protect the freedoms that we hold so dear.
After Disney announced Kimmel would be back beginning today, Mamdani reversed course. He says millions of Americans had helped the company find its backbone. Incumbent Mayor Adams, former Governor Cuomo, and Curtis Lee are also running for mayor. New York City is fighting a federal plan to roll back vehicle pollution rules. WNYC's Julia Haywood reports.
New York City is joining dozens of states and local governments in opposing a proposal from the Environmental Protection Agency that would reverse its 2009 endangerment finding. That landmark rule gave the EPA power to regulate greenhouse gas emissions from cars and trucks. The city filed multiple legal briefs, warning the reversal would worsen climate disasters like deadly heat waves and flooding, and undermine existing rules meant to cut vehicle emissions.
The EPA declined to comment on the lawsuit. City council leaders will hold a vote on a contentious housing development in the Bronx for former Rikers Island detainees. The project would provide 58 apartments for people with severe medical issues leaving the city jail complex, but it's faced intense opposition from the local council member, Christy Marmorato. That's usually enough to kill a housing plan, but the council is expected to hold the vote Thursday anyway, in a rare break from council custom. Councilmember Marmorato has not yet responded to our request for comment. 68 and partly sunny right now with a slight chance of afternoon showers and maybe some thunderstorms late afternoon. It'll become sunny and a high temperature of 81. And then tonight, a chance of showers and thunderstorms in 67. Tomorrow, slight chances of mid-afternoon showers and storms, mostly cloudy with a high temperature at about 80 degrees or so. We still have subway delays on the A, E, R, and W, and the C train skipping stops. It's 8:35.
Support for NPR comes from WNYC members and from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. RWJF is a national philanthropy working toward a future where health is no longer a privilege, but a right. Learn more at rwjf.org. And the Lodestar Foundation, inspired by the principle that helping those in need is a path to a happier, healthier, and more meaningful life. Learn more at lodestarfoundation.org.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Leila Fadel in Washington, D.C.
And I'm Michelle Martin in New York City. Jimmy Kimmel Live will be back on the air tonight, nearly a week after the late night show was pulled off the air.
During his monologue last week, Kimmel made fun of Trump's reaction to the Charlie Kirk killing and accused MAGA of using his death to score political points. The chair of the Federal Communications Commission made what seemed to be a public threat to ABC over the comments, and some affiliates urged the corporation to do something. Kimmel's show was yanked.
Now the show is back on, but not everywhere. Joining us to talk about all the back and forth is NPR's Madeleine Del Barco, who is with us from Los Angeles. Good morning, Madeleine.
Good morning.
So for people who might not know, the Walt Disney Company owns ABC. So what did Disney say about putting Kimmel's show back on the air?
Yeah, the Walt Disney Company said in a statement that it had originally suspended the show because they felt some of Jimmy Kimmel's comments were, quote, ill-timed and insensitive. And they wanted to, in their words, avoid further inflaming a tense situation and an emotional moment for our country. But after days of thoughtful conversations with Kimmel, Disney said it decided to return the show on air. But, even so, one of the larger broadcast affiliate owners, Sinclair, says it will not air Jimmy Kimmel Live on its ABC stations in 30 markets. That means the show will be unavailable to viewers in many parts of the country, mostly in the South and the Midwest. And for now, at least, Sinclair will replace Jimmy Kimmel Live with news programming.
People may remember that President Trump had celebrated the decision to suspend Kimmel's show, and the chair of the FCC, Brendan Carr, reportedly threatened affiliates that he might take their licenses or fine them if they kept it on the air. But yesterday, apparently he had a different message?
Yeah, so last week, Carr was on a podcast saying that pulling Kimmel off the air could be done the easy way or the hard way. But yesterday, Carr said that those comments were not meant as a threat to ABC affiliates. And on his X account, he posted what he said at a global affairs forum called the Concordia Summit.
The reality is there's a lot of Democrats out there that are engaged in a campaign of projection and distortion. And distortion is they're completely misrepresenting the work of the FCC and what we've been doing.
Anna Gomez, the only Democrat on the FCC, had said Kimmel's suspension was an alarming attack on the First Amendment. She celebrated Kimmel's return, and she thanked Americans from across the ideological spectrum for speaking out.
So, Madeleine, what about other reaction, elsewhere to the news about Kimmel?
Yeah, before the show was reinstated yesterday, nearly 500 entertainers, that include Pedro Pascal, Selena Gomez, and Olivia Rodrigo, had signed an open letter asking for Kimmel's return. Protesters around the country, including some conservatives, had been worried about what taking the show off the air meant for free speech in this country. And Kimmel's fellow late-night hosts had backed him up. Last night, Jon Stewart celebrated the news of his return, and he asked President Trump's defenders to join in fighting for the constitutional republic. In his monologue, Stephen Colbert cheered, saying, "Our long national late nightmare is over."
Jimmy Kimmel Live will return to air on ABC tomorrow, Tuesday night. Come on!
So Colbert, whose show is being canceled by CBS, joked that he's once again the only martyr in late night. And now many people are waiting to see what Jimmy Kimmel has to say when he returns later today.
That is NPR's Madeleine Del Barco. Madeleine, thank you.
Thank you.
For more on ABC's announcement and what we might see from the Republican-controlled FCC going forward, we turn now to Brian Stelter. He's the chief media analyst at CNN. Brian, good morning and welcome to the program.
Hi, good morning.
So what do you think were the biggest factors Disney was weighing when it decided to bring Kimmel back tonight?
Well, let's start from the premise that Disney did not want to sideline Kimmel to begin with. Mm-hmm. He is a beloved star at ABC. He's one of the biggest faces of the network. This network did not want to be forced into a position where it looked like it was caving to President Trump again. After all, it paid a settlement to Trump last December in a case that many legal scholars thought ABC could have won if it decided to go to court. So this is a situation that ABC did not want to be in, but it was under tremendous pressure under a period of hours on Wednesday, right before the program was about to air again. So it essentially tried to hit the pause button to try to calm this down. Now, I would actually argue that a week later, this is not calmed down. This is actually going to be a bigger controversy now because people have chosen their sides. And for all of the liberals, for the moderates, for the Disneyland fans who are happy that Kimmel's coming back. Now you have Trump voters and MAGA loyalists and MAGA media influencers who are ticked off and are vowing to try to punish Disney in new ways. So it's a tug of war situation, and you can feel people on both sides tugging back and forth.
Interesting. So maybe just the start of what's to come. The FCC chair, Brendan Carr, had said last week he could do things, quote, the easy way or the hard way. Most people took that as a threat. Right. He then said it was not meant that way, that the FCC's role is being distorted. I mean, what do you make of that?
The FCC's role is being distorted because the FCC does not actually have as much concrete power here as Carr and President Trump have claimed. It would be very hard to actually revoke a local station license. These stations are not actually under an immediate threat from the FCC. What they're under is this public pressure campaign. What Carr has been doing is called jawboning. I remember him starting to do this almost a year ago when he started sending letters to Disney and other media companies promising to open investigations and probes into the companies. Even though, Carr doesn't have that much concrete power, he has a lot of power to physically bully or pressure these companies. And that may help explain why Sinclair is not willing to air Kimmel tonight. But I think it goes deeper than that. Sinclair is a conservative company that wants to stand with Trump's America. So I think in some ways what we're seeing here is the unspooling of what we used to call broadcast. Broadcast media isn't so broad anymore if you have some stations refusing to air the national program.
Interesting. So you think the Sinclair Broadcasting decision is both political and concerns over the bullying?
Yes.
What's your assessment of what media organizations, not just ABC, can expect going forward from the FCC?
The pressure is going to continue because there have been so many episodes where Trump has been emboldened, where Carr has been emboldened. There are going to be more of these skirmishes. In fact, some of them might involve Disney. One of the factors that Disney CEO Bob Iger has to consider is that he has pending business before the government, a pending deal involving the NFL, for example. Will we see the government try to punish Disney in some form? Well, if the DOJ or the FCC takes action against Disney, a lot of people are going to assume that it all comes back to what a late night comedian is saying. And that's not how America's regulatory regime has worked up until now. This is a dramatic change from what we've seen from past administrations.
Brian Stelter is Chief Media Analyst at CNN. Thank you very much for your time and your insights.
Thank you.
This is NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from member stations and from the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, supporting books, radio, podcasts, film, television, theater, and more to bridge science and the humanities. And Eric and Wendy Schmidt through the Schmidt Family Foundation, working toward a healthy, resilient, secure world for all. On the web at theschmidt.org.
It's Morning Edition on WNYC. I'm Michael Hill. New Yorkers elect a new mayor in 6 weeks, and it's a race like no other in recent times. Assemblymember Zohran Mamdani won the Democratic primary. Former Governor Andrew Cuomo and incumbent Mayor Eric Adams are both running as independent candidates, and Curtis Sliwa is running as the Republican nominee. Now, to keep you on top of all of the latest, we bring you Campaign Catch-Up, a quick weekly look at the latest on this race. This week we have Errol Lewis, political anchor at New York One, where he hosts the nightly Inside City Hall show. Errol, good morning.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
Same here. Errol, polls show Mamdani remains the clear frontrunner. He made news again last night over a planned town hall on ABC. Do you see any signs of his campaign losing momentum? What would you need to happen for his opponents to catch up at this point?
Well, losing momentum is not likely, but his opponents can get their own act together. I think that's what would make this a much tighter race. The other candidates have not quite caught fire, and they haven't quite found the right combination of issues and slogans to really take off as far as the polls are concerned. The other big difference between all of these campaigns is that Mamdani is in the lead in part because he's got a big door-knocking campaign where thousands of people are out knocking on doors, reaching out to voters. It's a very different strategy than the other candidates who are using social media or increasingly televised ads just to try and reach a very broad public. It's not clear whether one or the other is going to prevail.
So Mamdani has a lot of volunteers who are doing the groundwork, the tough work, going out there and talking to voters.
Oh, absolutely. Somebody knocked on our door on Saturday, and they were alone. We don't expect to hear from the other candidates. I mean, it's just not part of what they're doing. And so there are people who are regular voters like me and my wife, who are getting a door knock. They're getting reached by thousands. I mean, tens of thousands, if you believe the campaign, hit the streets in the primary and on any given weekend. And they're trying to build up something similar with the help of a lot of unions and other organized groups that have lined up behind Zohran Mamdani.
And Errol, what does that say when a campaign sends out volunteers like that to knock on the door? And taking place in the absence of other candidates doing that, what does that say to voters? What do voters take away from that experience?
Well, for a lot of voters, it's something I would compare to if you ever use a rideshare company. Sometimes the driver will say, "Hey, would you give me a rating of 4 or a 5?" And most of us would just be inclined to do it just because the person asked. I think what it says is that there are volunteers and there's a campaign and there's something of a movement that's enough to get somebody out of their bed and have them go through the sometimes disappointing and embarrassing and tedious task of knocking on doors and either getting chased away or the person's not home or your feet hurt. There are a lot of different reasons not to do this. But when a volunteer does do it, I think it signals to voters that this is a candidate who's got some real followers, not somebody who's paid and kind of going through the motions, but somebody who really believes in the message.
Mayor Adams' campaign took a turn this week when he began talking about bathroom access for transgender public school students. How has that reverberated through the campaigns?
A lot of us have been scratching our heads. He all of a sudden began talking about this question of who's taking showers and whose bathroom and, with regard to gender. And what I noticed was something that really tracked with my own memories, which is that there aren't a lot of New York City students that are taking showers at all. This isn't Los Angeles. This isn't Des Moines or someplace like that. A lot of, it seemed just kind of out of step. And certainly after many, many years in public office, this is the first time Eric Adams has brought these things up. For those of us who are covering the race, the suggestion that he might be trying to do it for political reasons, of course, is front of mind. And then the question becomes, well, who's he trying to get and why and how would this work? And I think the most logical conclusion would be that there are some conservative voters who are out there, social conservatives, and Eric Adams is trying to get their attention.
What do you make of Schumer? What do you make of Jeffries still not saying who they support for mayor?
It's very interesting. Those gentlemen are involved in national politics, and as the leaders of their respective conferences in Congress, they have to try and get a majority, and that has a whole set of political concerns that have nothing to do with New York City. And because New York is the media capital and because this is such a high-profile race, there's a very distinct possibility that there could be negative blowback in some of the seats that they're trying to flip or hold on to far, far away from New York. And when you say that you're a democratic socialist, like Zohran Mamdani does, in New York City, it's not that unusual. He wouldn't, if he wins, he wouldn't even be the first democratic socialist mayor of New York. We've had quite a number who have been prominent in New York politics, and one was mayor, David Dinkins, and, you could arguably nudge Fiorello LaGuardia in that direction as well. So now this could, in fact, become a national issue if you've got a democratic socialist mayor who's being endorsed by Schumer or by Jeffries, and then all of a sudden there's a lot of negative messaging that's going on in some district in Indiana or in Texas or in Wisconsin or in Florida. And then that starts to spoil their national strategy. So I think their local politics and their national politics could easily be at odds, and I think that's what's going on here.
Errol Lewis, host of the nightly Inside City Hall show on New York One. Errol, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
WNYC is supported by the New York Historical and its exhibition, The New York Sari, exploring the deep influence that the South Asian community has had on the culture of New York City. More at nyhistory.org.
An ER doctor volunteers to serve in Gaza.
It's about 6 o'clock in the morning, and that's what we're waking up to.
She's shocked by how many patients are children, and she wants U.S. policymakers to do something about it.
We're about to walk into Senator Thune's office, Majority Leader for the Senate.
But are they listening? On the next Reveal. Tonight at 9 on WNYC.
Marketplace Morning Report is coming up next, and then in 10 minutes at 9 o'clock, it's the BBC NewsHour on WNYC. Let's check in with London and see what they're working on. Hello, London.
Good morning, WNYC. I'm Paul Henley. On today's NewsHour, Israel ignores international pressure and pursues its offensive in Gaza. And an autistic person reacts to President Trump's latest false medical claims. That's BBC NewsHour coming up at 9 on WNYC.
We have multiple subway delays, so check before you go. We have the 4 train, Woodlawn bound, skipping some stops there, and the C train still skipping stops as well. So check that out before you head out the door this morning. We're at 69 and partly sunny right now. We have a slight chance of some afternoon showers, maybe some thunderstorms late in the afternoon. We will have some sunshine today, and it will warm up to about 81 degrees. So it's still going to feel like summer's trying to hang on. A chance of showers and thunderstorms tonight in 67, then tomorrow up near 80 again with slight chances of showers and thunderstorms mid-afternoon.
We've now heard from one of the most powerful economic policymakers in the country.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Palo Alto Networks. Palo Alto Networks delivers comprehensive cybersecurity protection while automating cyber defense to stop threats so organizations can thrive. Learn more at paloaltonetworks.com. And by Odoo, offering software that provides building blocks for creating a custom software suite. Odoo, what businesses need.
I'm David Brancaccio in Los Angeles. The newest member of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, close ally of President Trump, Stephen Miron, made his case for more and larger interest rate cuts in a speech yesterday. Last week, the Fed lowered interest rates by 0.25 percentage point. Miron wants a bigger half-point cut. Marketplace's Nancy Marshall-Genzer has more on his thinking.
Stephen Miron says President Trump's policies are going to push prices down, so the Fed doesn't have to worry that lowering interest rates will spark inflation. Speaking at the Economic Club of New York, Miron said, for example, with immigrants leaving the country, there will be more housing available and rents will fall.
I believe forecasters have underappreciated the significant impact of immigration policy on rent inflation.
Miron also says deregulation will lower companies' costs, and there are, quote, unreasonable levels of concern at the Fed about the inflationary effects of President Trump's tariffs.
The upshot is that monetary policy is well into restrictive territory. Leaving short-term interest rates roughly 2 percentage points too tight risks unnecessary layoffs and higher unemployment.
But Fitch Ratings economist Olu Sinola doesn't buy Miron's arguments. He says there's still a lot of uncertainty around tariffs and the total number of immigrants leaving the country. And Sinola doesn't think Miron will be able to convince other Fed officials to follow his lead.
They have their own staff, and their staff, they go out there, they talk to people, they talk to businesses. My sense is that that carries a lot more weight.
Sinola says it doesn't help that Miron is only supposed to be at the Fed temporarily through January. I'm Nancy Marshall-Genzer for Marketplace.
Artificial intelligence hardware maker NVIDIA plans to put $100 billion with a B into software maker OpenAI. The boss there, Sam Altman, says the tie-up will help build a vast pool of data that could form the basis of the economy of the future. The BBC's Erin Delmore's in New York.
It's a blockbuster deal, and it's a credit to the demand for new AI technology, like OpenAI's ChatGPT.
While OpenAI makes the artificial intelligence chatbot, NVIDIA makes the high-powered chips that enable its use. NVIDIA makes specialized processors or chips that are used for large language models like ChatGPT, and that's what lets the technology process data and execute tasks. So a deal like this brings the two technology giants closer together. NVIDIA reportedly is receiving a stake in OpenAI as part of the deal.
Dow futures are up 0.1%. I see S&P and NASDAQ futures are each down just slightly now. The OECD Club of Richer Nations has a new forecast predicting economic growth in the U.S. will fall to 1.8% this year and go lower still to 1.5% next year, with the full headwinds of tariffs not yet arrived.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Amazon Business, committed to business buying solutions to empower leaders to streamline and focus on growth. Learn more about smart business buying at amazonbusiness.com. And by the Financial Times, global news, geopolitics, and market data all in one place. Source FT. There's more at FT.com.
We continue to follow the Trump administration's abrupt change in skilled visa policy. New H-1B visas, often for engineers and people from other specialized fields, now cost $100,000. The White House says it's to push companies to hire Americans first. One of the risks here is that entrepreneurship suffers. University of Michigan professor Eric Gordon has been considering this. Eric, good morning.
Hello, David.
You've been thinking about how the new rule on the skilled visas percolates into industry. People should understand it's not necessarily an applicant somewhere in the world paying the six-figure new fee. It would often be what you think the companies.
Yeah, the companies put up the money, and big companies that can afford $100,000, a lot more than the smaller companies can afford it, will get a new advantage.
So you've been doing the math here in your head, and if you're giant, this extra fee may not be welcome, but you can easily digest it.
You can easily pay it, and if you're one of the big tech companies, you have an other out. You probably have offices outside the U.S. where you can hire workers instead of bringing them to the U.S. Small companies don't have offices outside the U.S. They don't have offices in India or Canada. They have to import people if they can't find U.S. workers with the right skills.
So I'm hearing from you here a concern that this tilts the playing field in favor of the incumbents, the big getting a new advantage.
I talked to a couple of people at smaller, mid-sized companies, the kind of companies that are funded by venture capital, and they're very worried. They don't have $100,000 per worker, and they don't have an office in Bangalore.
All right, so hire some U.S.-based workers with nice, shiny engineering degrees to do the work.
That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to do that instead of using H-1Bs unless you can't find those workers. And in a lot of engineering and tech fields, you really can't find enough of those workers here.
I mean, I've seen the statistics. I mean, there is a mismatch between the number of people coming out of STEM programs and what U.S. industry needs. For instance, I saw the figures for the microchip industry.
Yeah, it's really tough. We do not have enough homegrown STEM students, especially at the graduate level. And it's something that, we've been solving with a Band-Aid, the H-1Bs, but maybe we need to rethink a few other things so that we produce more folks here.
We talk about being a country that embraces entrepreneurship. We talk about being a country that wants to look out for smaller businesses, but you see a policy here that seems to be cutting in a different direction.
Every politician during an election year runs around telling audiences that small businesses are the backbone of America and that they support small businesses. Maybe not so much.
Eric Gordon teaches at the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business. He's also an attorney who teaches in the law school. Eric, thank you very much.
My pleasure, David.
Our producers are Tamar Fagan, Ariana Rosas, and Erica Soderstrom. Our senior producer is Alex Schroeder. Our supervising senior producer is Meredith Gerritsen-Morby. In Los Angeles, I'm David Brancaccio, and we're from APM, American Public Media.
WNYC support comes from FX presenting English Teacher. The original comedy series returns to follow Evan, Gwen, and Marky as they vie for their students' divided attention. FX's English Teacher returns September 25th on FX. All episodes streaming on Hulu.
Up next, it's the BBC NewsHour on WNYC. Today on the Brian Lehrer Show, it's 30 issues in 30 days. It continues with a look at the 3 housing-related questions that will appear on New York City's ballots in the election this fall, November 4th. Plus, what the changing guidance from Washington on vaccines means for all of us. That's today at 10 on WNYC. We're at 69 with partly sunny skies right now, on the way to a high temperature of about 81 degrees today, under some sunshine, but we'll have chances of afternoon showers and storms.
This is WNYC, FM, HD, and AM New York.
Welcome to NewsHour from the BBC World Service with me, Paul Henley. Coming up, Israel dismisses more countries recognizing a Palestinian state and plows on with its offensive in Gaza.
I witnessed myself, families yelling and screaming in the streets, running out from their buildings and their tents because they received alarm for airstrike.
A leading pro-democracy campaigner released from prison in Egypt is reunited with his family. Why foreign competitors and environmentalists are unhappy about a mammoth deal between 2 of America's tech giants to build AI infrastructure. And President Trump amplifies the myth that vaccines, and now paracetamol too, can cause autism. We hear from an autistic person.
I am quite scared about the impact it's going to have, but equally, I'm really not shocked that he said that.
First, the world news.
Hello, I'm Justine Green with the BBC News. President Trump is addressing the UN General Assembly in New York shortly. He'll then hold a series of meetings, including with Arab and Muslim leaders. It's expected they'll discuss the future of post-war governance in Gaza. There'll also be talks with Ukraine's President Zelensky. The BBC's Neda Tawfiq is outside UN headquarters.
We know that Donald Trump doesn't quite have much use for the UN. Donald Trump, though, does love the General Assembly Hall and the theater it offers to boast about his accomplishments.